when on May 14th of 1948, Israel's first Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion declared the independence of the Jewish state of Israel, he didn't mention Jerusalem, and Ben-Gurion didn't specify where the capital of the newly restored Jewish nation would be. As war immediately broke out, Israel invaded by its Arab neighbors, Jerusalem wasn't even officially part of Israel. The United Nations had specified it should be an international city. But when the war ended in 1949, Israel held the western part of Jerusalem, Jordan had the east. Israel's parliament, the Knesset, was put in West Jerusalem. So was the Prime Minister's office and other parts of the government. And in 1967, after Israel defeated Jordan, Egypt, and Syria in a lightning 6 days, Israel unified the city and declared ever since then that an undivided Jerusalem is the eternal capital of the Jewish state. Yet just about every embassy, including the United States Embassy, had been established in Tel Aviv. Here in Washington, many friends of Israel wondered why that never changed. In the 1990s, American politicians, many at the suggestion of the pro-Israel lobby AIPAC, felt it was time to take a stand, especially as the Oslo Accords of 1993 gave hope for Israeli-Palestinian peace.
Certainly the overwhelming majority of Congress voting to affirm the fact that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel was a very big deal.
Josh Bloch, who used to work for AIPAC, now the president of an activist group, the Israel Project, noting the Jerusalem Embassy Act was passed by the Senate 93-5, and more than 90% of the House voted yes. President Bill Clinton signed the bill, which said the U.S. Embassy should move from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem by 1999.
There was a hope that the peace process, which was very active, in which people had a lot of hope in the 1990s, would culminate at the end of that decade, and of course the U.S. would move its embassy, and all these things would align in that way. And then there was this idea that if we just held back on the embassy, it would somehow facilitate, the process and facilitate peace.
And that's why president after president invoked a waiver that Congress had put in the legislation, declaring that to protect the national security interests of the United States, the embassy would not be moved, not now, not while the U.S. was sporadically trying to mediate for peace between Israel and the Palestinians. But Donald Trump declared last December no more waivers. He would recognize reality, taking Jerusalem off the table, he said, though U.S. officials insist that doesn't mean Palestinians won't have part of Jerusalem or its suburbs. The official Palestinian reaction is to have no contact with the Trump administration, whereas Israel's supporters in AIPAC here were celebrating. And at a Republican rally in Indiana last Thursday, Vice President Mike Pence found that Trump voters care about this issue.
And the new American embassy will open in Jerusalem, the capital of the state of Israel, on Monday.
Americans have wanted to see the embassy moved to Jerusalem for so long.
This is connected with current international events, the U.S. supporting Israel's right to take action in Syria, Israel's prime minister exposing Iran's nuclear work, and Donald Trump quitting the Iran nuclear deal and citing that Israeli intelligence. Trump likes to say that relations with Jerusalem, yes, Jerusalem, have never been better. Dan Raviv, I-24 News, Washington.